So here I am again making yet another video, and it was inspired by a brief dialogue that I had on Facebook yesterday. That was I was responding to some individuals who I don't really know especially well in any context, including Facebook, who were expressing something that I've heard from primarily non-duality teachers, and that is the issue of point of view. A point of view is a kind of judgment we make about good and bad, right and wrong, fair and unfair. And that points of view are somehow not cool in the non-dual world, as if that they are simply artifacts of the personal ego, that there is no right or wrong in the universe. The universe just is. It doesn't possess qualities that are good or bad. That good, what one person sees as good, another sees as bad. And you know, this is a tricky area because obviously the universe doesn't have a point of view. But what is the universe? See, when you say the universe doesn't have a point of view, you're talking about the inanimate vastness of everything. Yes, that does not have a point of view, but you have a point of view. And are not you part of the universe? Where do you draw the line in a non-dual universe? If you say, well, the universe doesn't know right from wrong, and therefore any assertion that this is right and this is wrong is personal and somehow just that's not right. See, that's kind of a judgment call too, right? You see, you start getting into very tricky territory. We have points of view all the time, and points of view are like thoughts. For example, the point of view is, I like ice cream, but I don't like ice cream all the time, right? Ice cream, the liking of ice cream is something that emerges in experience from time to time. I don't really want ice cream right now, even though I do like ice cream. But I don't say ice cream is good. Ice cream isn't good or bad. I would agree with that. It's something that simply this body-mind enjoys from time to time. But let's get something into a better example than that. I would say that someone like Donald Trump is a threat to our freedom and our quality as a nation. Now there it's a little complicated. Well, the non-dual person would say, there's no truth to what you're saying. That's only your point of view. And I do believe there is some truth to what I'm saying because, like it or not, we live in a society. And we live in a society that has certain rules and regulations. And I have a certain point of view that I want to live in a society that tolerates difference, that appreciates each person's individual existence. And so, yes, I might not say that that is in absolute truth, but it's something that I believe in rather strongly. And so let's go back to this whole conversation we've been having here on YouTube about, well, there's just this. Well, see, just this includes that point of view. Okay? Because all of this, that this comes from you and me. Okay? This would not exist if you didn't exist. So when we say the my story, you might say, well, doesn't this point of view come from my story? And I would say, no, it doesn't. Because it's simply part of the emerging element of this. You could say, well, doesn't my story and my needs and desires all come from this? And I would say, they do. They do come from this. But they are based on the fundamental illusion that my story should have greater power than this. And that's where the conflict comes in. That's where suffering happens. When I don't get my way, I'm upset. When illness comes, I might say, that wasn't really fair. I've lived a good life. Why am I the one getting cancer or advanced heart disease? Where's the fairness in that? Yes, that is all part of this as well, but it's the assertion that my story has primacy. I may feel that Donald Trump is bad for America, but my point of view doesn't have primacy over the whole universal expression of this. It's simply part of the expression of this. And it's something I would fight for. Another issue that's very important to me is climate change. The burning of fossil fuels is making life very difficult for human beings and all kinds of animals and plants all over the world. Yes, some animals and plants actually benefit from climate change. But I feel that my quality of life doesn't benefit. So I will do what I can do to reduce my effect on climate change. It's something that's important to me. It's part of this. There's nothing wrong with a point of view. And by the way, that sound you heard in the background is my dog doing this head shake thing with her collar on, and her licensing and tags make that little clanging sound. She does a lot of that. It's part of her expression of her dog, body, mind. So don't be afraid of having a point of view, a preference. But just know that it's a preference that belongs to the expression of your body, mind at that time. And that often we have a point of view, and I'm going to hear this is important also. Often we have a point of view saying, well, I think the burning of fossil fuels is bad. But then new research comes out, and this won't happen. But say new research were to come out with saying, well, actually, the burning of fossil fuels isn't as bad as people have been thinking, that it actually has very little effect on climate change. I'm quite sure that won't happen, but let's pretend that it will. Then we need to be open to modifying our point of view. It's not something we're attached to, because when we're attached to a point of view, then it becomes my story. And that's where the suffering begins. And I'll go, and the person goes, well, did you see the new research showing that the burning of fossil fuels doesn't have a negative impact on the environment? And I might say something out of ignorance, saying like, well, that's what you believe. Because my ego is invested in my earlier assertion of truth. And that's exactly where conflict and suffering happens. I'm wedded to a point of view. It's part of my identity as an intelligent human being. I could also say classical music is better than pop music, because I like classical music and I don't especially care for pop music. As soon as I say that, I create separation and conflict between me and anyone who disagrees with me. And that's where the problem happens with point of view. All I can say is, I prefer classical music to pop music. I could construct some arguments why I think classical music is better, but they're absurd, because our values of music simply differ. Now, it's also possible that in the world of music, a person has not been exposed much to classical music. It's a very small part of the musical scene. So if someone says, I don't like classical music, I might say, have you actually ever listened? And it might be an interesting area to explore, but that's part of the openness to experience. Where when I say, well, I don't like classical music and I've not been exposed to it, I'm now back into the zone of my story, my life. And although both those statements may be true, they also imply an assertion saying, I have no interest to be exposed to it. And that's fine too. It doesn't really make much difference in that area. But you see where my story begins to blend in to points of view, and that's where the problems happen. So anyway, I wanted to deal with the subject. It sounds like I'm sort of getting a kick out of making these new videos. And I do. I actually do enjoy them. But this issue of points of view in my story, in my life, they're tricky. But listen, it's important to stand for things. I was born and raised in the Jewish tradition. And in Jewish culture, it's very important to stand for what is fair and just. And that quality of Jewish way of life is very important to me. I don't say it as me as a Jew, okay? It's me as a human being that considers qualities of justice in life. And perhaps because of the many centuries and thousands of years of the persecution of Jews, the issue of justice is especially important to people of Jewish background. I'm actually not sure about that, but I know it's true for me. And it's possible that's because of the many centuries of persecution. Again, I'm not sure about that. I'm merely speculating. But speculating about truth is also an important part of our human condition. Our openness to information, our sensitivity to what is right and wrong. Because we go through life making judgments about, well, this is right and this is wrong. It might be about something like abortion, a very tricky issue, or the death penalty, or even just littering. Is it right to just litter and throw trash out of your car window? Or is that simply part of simply the non-dual universe, just another happening, neither better nor worse than anything else? These are all good questions to ponder. And the important thing is when you ponder them is not to have fidelity to what some sage 500 years ago said, but to be true to yourself. It's so important to be true to your own heart, okay? When I hear a cruel joke, and I don't like cruel humor that debases others, I know my heart says something not right about that. And I don't find it funny or humorous, and I don't want to be part of it. But I also make very, very sarcastic comments about life. We could go into that. I am thought of as a rather edgy type person. But certain things, because they're comedy, there's a line that where comedy bleeds into, this is how I really feel about gay people or black people or Jews or whatever. And that's where, as long as there's an absurdist quality to it, that's great. But when it has a serious hurting quality, to me, that's not right. But that's me. What we find funny is another very, very personal thing. It really varies from one person to another. But this is all part of the life of judgment and points of view. We all have them. And even if we say we don't have them, we're probably lying to ourselves because our ego says it's not cool to have a point of view because that contradicts some of the fundamental principles of non-duality. I would suggest that's utter nonsense. But hey, that's me. Anyway, this is a very good area of discussion, the issue of points of view and what is truth and what is false. So I think I might make a second video on this topic about truth and falseness because I think it's one of the most important discussions a person can have. Anyway, if you have any questions, always ask, or feel free to ask and tell me where I've been wrong. Tell me where you disagree with me. I'm also completely open to questions, people who question my own statements and assertions. Anyway, very good talking with you, and I think this will not be my last video. Bye-bye.